that helps us tell Congress that people came to our meetings. I think I told many of you that. My name is Jason McKinney. I'm the Community Involvement Coordinator for this site. I have Lauren Guitry Leach, she's the project manager. Chris Villarreal, he's the supervisor. We also have Omar Valdez from Texas Health. You want to stand up, Omar? And John Torres, where are you at, John? Oh, I'm sorry, John. He's from TCEQ. Hold on.
Dr. Jackie Patel.
Hi, good afternoon. Jackie Patel, Texas Department of State Health Services.
Are there any elected officials here today?
I'm Melissa Rao. I'm on the Board of Directors for the North Harris County Regional Water Authority.
Thank you. Are there any others? Okay. I'll start running a little later. You're good.
My name is Scott Johnson. I'm the Director of Environmental and Public Health for Harris County.
Okay, great. What we're planning on doing tonight is updating everybody on the current actions at the Jones Road Superfund site. We would like to hold the questions until after Lauren's presentation, if you don't mind, and we'll hopefully get everybody, we're here till 8, so we'll hopefully get everybody's questions answered. You ready?
Yeah, hi everyone. Okay, that's better. I am Lauren Leach. I'm the remedial project manager with EPA for the Jones Road Groundwater Plume Superfund site. So just a brief agenda of what our presentation is going to show tonight. We're going to go over same thing we did last year, but just in case there's new people, we're going to go over the Superfund authority and process. Then we're going to talk about site-specific background and response actions. Then we're going to focus on the remedial investigation and feasibility study. Go over the most recent sampling results, water line connections in the area, any ongoing activities, and the next steps. So what is Superfund? In 1980, Congress established the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, also known as Superfund. The Superfund program is administered by the EPA, but we work in coordination with different state and tribal governments. Basically, this law allows the Superfund to clean up hazardous waste sites and then to force responsible parties, so the people who created the waste, to pay to clean it up if there is one. So what a typical textbook process for the Superfund, it would go along this Canyon Road. We would have site discovery here of the waste. We would go into a preliminary assessment and site inspection, and then it would get a hazard ranking score. And if it qualifies, then it would get listed on the national priority list from the Superfund site. Then we move into a remedial investigation, and then feasibility study, so what's going on with the site and how could we most effectively clean it up. And then at that point, we propose a selective remedy. We stop at this point to take in public comment, and then that goes into deciding what the selective remedy would be, which is established in our record of decision, and that is where we select the remedy to be put in place. From there, we go ahead and design. We do remedial design, so we design the actual remedy, and then we move into remedial action. That's where we implement and reconstruct that remedy. And from there, we move into an operation and maintenance phase, and then finally can be deleted from the national priorities list. So you all are here at the meeting tonight, so you know we're in the northwest corner of Houston, outside of city limits within Harris County. So this specific Superfund site was a former dry cleaner. It operated from 1988 to 2002, and they improperly disposed of their waste in the storm sewers and also in the septic tanks. and then that leaked down into the soil and then down into the groundwater. And you can see this is the Cyber Shopping Center here, this upside down L or Carpenter Square, and the former dry cleaner was here. I apologize, this is kind of hard to see, but this black outline here, that's where that Cypress Center shopping center is. And then here in red, that is our water line service area. There's also a no new wells drill zone promulgated in 2006 by the Harris County. And then this dash line was put in place in 2003 by the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration, and that is also a drilling restricted zone. So those are a couple of institutional controls we have at the site to help protect the groundwater. So what are the contaminants associated with the site? The primary one is PCE. So it's tetrachloroethene. It goes by a couple names. You could hear perchloroethylene, tetrachloroethylene, but we mostly call it PCE. And then PCE breaks down into several other products. So this is TCE or trichloroethene, cis and trans 1,2-DCE or dichloroethene, and then vinyl chloride. This is a little figure just to show basically the molecular degradation of PCE. So at the site, the affected media that we have here is soil, indoor air, and groundwater. So this is a really simple diagram to kind of show what's happening at the site. This is the shopping center, we can say, and then here, this red blob could be the original mass that was the contaminant mass. And then you can see from there, we have vapors moving into the indoor air. We have a shallow source area zone in the soil. We have a shallow water bearing zone. We have a deep unsaturated zone, and then the deep aquifer, that's the Chico aquifer. And that's primarily where people have their drinking water wells sprayed at. I apologize for that. I'll make sure to put this slide on the website so that we can download it if they need to. Okay, I'm going to keep chugging along while this is happening. So this is just a timeline of things that have happened at the site. First, from 1988 to 2002, that's when the former dry cleaner operated. And then in 2003, the TCEQ initiated a remedial investigation. And they also, at that time, provided filtration systems to people's wells. In 2003, also the site was listed on the NPL. And then that's when the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration put that drilling restricted boundary around the site. And then in 2006, Harris County came around and they also promulgated the rule that was a no new wells in that red boundary that we saw previously. And then in 2008, EPA led a time-critical removal action to construct a public water supply. So that's what's available still today. If people have well water and they want to connect to the public water supply, please just reach out and we can coordinate that. And then in 2009, TCEQ completed that remedial investigation and feasibility study. And from there, we selected a remedy that was designated in the 2010 ROD. That's the record of decision. And then in 2011, EPA plugged just under 100 wells. Those were associated with that constructing the public water and hooking people up. And then in 2012, EPA started a pilot study to do in-situ bioremediation. So that's where they inject an amendment. It's a emulsified food-grade vegetable oil into the subsurface to try to help the microbes break down those products. So that molecular figure we showed, that is the goal of that, is to break down those contaminant waste. And then in 2014, EPA completed an optimization review, and that review looked at the site as a whole and realized that we needed to focus our efforts at the source area to try to remove a lot of the source immediately around the shopping center to prevent further migration out into the neighborhood. So in 2016, we completed a full-scale in situ bioremediation. So that was a remedial action that we completed at the site, right around the shopping center. We injected that amendment to try to reduce the contaminants in place. And then in 2017, we completed another remedial investigation feasibility study. And this time it was looking at vapor and the source area immediately around the shopping center. And from there, we signed a new record of decision, or we did an amendment to the record of decision, and we selected an additional remedy. And that remedy was soil vapor extraction. In 2018, EPA led a time-critical removal action, and we installed vapor mitigation systems at several suites within the shopping center that had elevated indoor air vapors. And at that time, in 2018, we also conducted an additional hotspot treatment in the ISD using in situ bioremediation. In 2019, EPA installed that soil vapor extraction system, and that currently operates today. We just awarded an extension for that contract, and that'll continue operating to the end of the fiscal year in 2027. We also completed our second 5-year review, and that's looking at really implementation and performance. And that is what was determined that the site was not protected because people were still having public wells and not switching to the private or the public water supplies. And then in 2023, EPA conducted an additional ISD in situ bioremediation injection just around the dry cleaning site. And lastly, in 2024, last summer, I was out here and we connected an additional 5 properties to the public water supply. Okay, I know that was really long, but that is the history of the site. Okay, so this is the big reason that we're having the public meeting, is to talk about the remedial investigation and feasibility study. So that's what we just awarded in February, a $3.2 million contract, and that is to investigate the extent of the contaminant within this greater groundwater area. And then we're also looking again at the feasibility of that 2010 record of decision selected remedy, which was pump and treat and hydraulic containment. That's basically where you have the groundwater moving in. So, like, groundwater here is moving outside of the site, but if you have hydraulic containment, you're basically keeping the gradient of the groundwater moving in one direction, inward, so nothing's escaping out. They're trying to keep, isolated into a specific area. I don't know the full extent because we haven't got through design, but that was what was selected in 2010 to do that. But this new investigation will be looking at that to see if that's the best option for this area. And if we change it from that, there will be a time for public comment that people can let us know what they're going to prefer. So this is our estimated timeline for field work. So we did an initial site visit in March with our contractor. We have our contractors here too. if you would like to talk to them. And then we are currently working on site-specific work plans to figure out what we're doing at the site and exactly the details of how that will get done. And then right now our big push is to get access agreements. We're working internally to get that organized, and we did a little bit of door-to-door this afternoon. But if you would like to grant EPA access, please come see us after this meeting, and we'll go into what we're asking access for in a bit. But we have 2 phases of our field investigation. Phase 1, and that'll be happening in August, September timeframe. And then phase 2 will be happening in the end of this year or early next year. And then with this contract, we also have planned additional groundwater and vapor sampling. And then we're hoping for completion in September of 2026. Just keep in mind that these dates are subject to change. That's a report that we put out. It's a remedial investigation and feasibility report that gets finalized. At that point, we have collected all the data that we're going to collect, and we wrap it up into a report. And then we also, at that point, are looking at the feasibility of that selected remedy and all potential new remedies, and that also gets wrapped up and put into a report. So the phase 1 field investigation, we're going to be doing site reconnaissance. We're going to be walking around the site, looking at different things. We're going to be surveying the wells. So we'll have surveys out here to get a better grasp on where the current monitoring wells are and historic monitoring wells. We're also going to be updating the conceptual site model. And then we're going to be producing a data gap report. So where we need more data, we'll target those areas. And then we're also working on a more in-depth geologic model. And then, as discussed previously, we're working to get access agreements in this phase. And then lastly, passive soil gas samplers. So passive soil gas samplers are, about the size of like an old flow canister. And they're basically, you can auger into the ground, maybe an inch or 2. They're about a foot or 2 in depth. They're left there for a week or 2, and then collected. They're flush with the ground surface, and it's a one-time event that's very minimally invasive. So if you're within that water line service area and you would like to grant EPA access for that additional test, please again see us in the back, or you can see me after the meeting for those access agreements. Phase 2, that will include well evaluation and redevelopment. We've had a couple wells that have gone offline that we're going to try to get back. We're also going to be doing a high-resolution site characterization, and what that is that is a real-time, high-density tool that we probe into the ground, and it collects data in real time. So then from there we know which way to step out next. And then we'll be installing additional monitoring wells, and we also have plans to do some well plug and abandonment. So if you have a well that's out of service, that you would like to be P&A, plug and abandoned, just again, see, we can sign access to, and we can get that done. And then lastly, we also have additional groundwater and vapor sampling. So if you do have a well that is functioning and you would like your water tested, you can also sign an access agreement, and EPA can come out and test your well. Usually collected at the tap, so you wouldn't have to go into your well. We can also test your indoor air. So if you would like that tested as well, again, see me and we can get that set up. And then I know we're talking a lot about access agreements, but I just wanted to highlight why they're so important. They really are critical in facilitating the cleanup process. They really help us assess the contaminant concentrations and the extent, and reevaluate any potential risks, and they help develop effective remediation strategies. So how do you fill out an access agreement? Well, we have some in the back, and I have some up front, or you can contact me. But this is what the form looks like here. And you basically just fill it out, and this is the terms of agreement. And what thing I wanted to note is it's pretty lengthy, this access agreement, but if you feel uncomfortable with some of these, but maybe not all, you can just strike those out. It could be modified. And also something about this access agreement is if at any time you no longer want to get an EPA access, you can just revoke it. So just letting you know that if you're on the fence, but you want to go ahead and give us access maybe to do that one-time passive soil gas sampling, but maybe you don't want a big drill rig, then we can modify this agreement for that. Okay, so moving into the February 2025 sampling data. This is the sampling data we collected for the site for PCE. I know it's really hard to see, but I'm pointing out. So for PCE, we had very little exceedances over the maximum contaminant levels outside of this site boundary. So the two are the SPE well, which is still, it's hard to see, but it's right there. And then just south on Barely Lane, we have monitoring well 26 that also have an exceedance of PCE. And then within the shopping center area, we have a number of exceedances for PCE, but most of these are our soil vapor extraction wells, and those are actually sucking in water and vapors at that time. So that is what we would expect as we're still cleaning up contaminant waste in this area.
What depth is that?
Sorry?
What depth is that?
These are all of our monitoring wells, so this includes both the shallow and our deep monitoring wells.
And deep is like 200, 400, or what?
I think our deepest well is, it's range in the 200s.
Could you tell us the streets on there? So we can
Yeah.
find it?
Yes, thank you. This is Jones Road here. This is Barely Lane. This is, I can't remember the name. This is Timber Hollow, Forest Valley, Echo Springs. Wood Edge is up here. That's the name. I couldn't think of it. Wood Edge here. Timber Hollow, Possum Hollow, Timber Crest.
Eldridge?
Yes.
is my side.
Okay.
It's off now.
So I'm not familiar with that street.
Most of these are within the water boundary. And the water boundary goes,
It's hard to see.
to right here. You can see the yellow right here. So that's the water boundary. This is the water boundary within that whole thing. Does anybody live within that? This right here?
If that's Eldridge, yes. That's Eldridge, yeah. But I can't tell. About a half a mile west.
Yeah.
Is that Oak Valley?
Something I'll note too is we do have data for private wells in this area, but we're unable to release those locations. But in a couple slides I have that data.
West line is Oak Valley.
Here, this one? Okay, thank you. Okay, the 0.5 U just means it's under the detection limit of the analytical number.
You represent, it just says, we analyze the water.
It's not on. It is.
We analyze the water, and the detection limit for the method used to analyze the water is 0.5 micrograms per liter. So 0.5 parts per liter. So we didn't detect it at or above 0.5 micrograms per liter. So the MCL applies for order nitrogen, is not detected at that level. The zero means it's undetected at that level.
Is it still traveling?
Is it still traveling?
Volume still traveling?
We're going to figure that out, the characterization. We'll do the high definition characterization. We're going to get a much better understanding of groundwater flow and stuff. That's our goal. We want to understand where it's going and where it's not. And if we get access, we get a much better picture of that. So everything she mentioned earlier will give us answers to that question.
So all
Are we
We've been doing that for years. This is the most recent data that we have, in February of 2025. We have several years of data that we've collected. Is it going down? Is it going up? Well, it's going down in the source area. We have to look at individual wells. The conceptual site models are going to look at that specifically. Data trends, is it going up, where it's going down, to give us a better understanding of where that's going to be migrating. So we're going to figure all that out. We're going to spend a lot of effort over the next year or so answering those questions specifically. This effort.
Excuse me, we were going to hold off questions until the end, but if you want to ask them now, do me a favor, raise your hand so I can bring you a mic so everybody can hear your question. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people aren't hearing the questions that are being answered.
We're almost done with this presentation. And then we'll take all our questions.
Okay, so this is the sampling results of the monitoring wells for vinyl chloride. We did have 2 wells that had exceedances over the maximum containment levels, which is 2 for vinyl chloride. That's our monitoring well 16 and monitoring well 11R. Oh, sorry, 12, monitoring well 12. Okay. And then we had 4 monitoring wells around the site that also had exceedances for vinyl chloride. So here are the groundwater sampling results for the private residences that we tested in this sampling event. We did have 2 wells that had exceedances over the maximum containment level for PCE in yellow. We also collected, during that sampling event, vapor sampling. So this is the shopping center. So you can see we collected samples in these first 3 suites, in the executive suite, and then on the far south end at the, I think it's doggy daycare suite. And we didn't have any exceedances over the regional screening levels within the indoor air, the outdoor air, or the subslab. And then again, we collected samples at private residences for air sampling, and we didn't have any exceedances of the regional screening levels for residential air. We're getting close to the end, but I just wanted to let the community know again that we, EPA, can pay for your water line connection if you so choose. We pay for all of the installation, the permitting fees, all of that. The homeowner is only responsible for just their monthly utility bill, the water bill. And if you're interested in connecting and you're within that water line boundary, you can also reach out to me. Okay, so ongoing activities. So currently our soil vapor extraction system around the site is still operating. We just extended that contract for an additional 2 years. With that, we also extended the vapor mitigation systems that are actually within the suites that pull the air out before it gets inside the suites. We also extended additional groundwater and vapor sampling for our monitoring well program and also for private residences. So again, if you have interested and you're within that water line area, we can have your well tested or the indoor air tested. And then lastly, we are working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to implement additional institutional controls at the site. Okay, last slide, I promise. So next steps, I thought you guys might want to know what happens after we do this big investigation. One of 2 things will happen. During the feasibility study, we'll either decide, okay, this is the most feasible remedy, which is the pump and treat hydraulic containment. And from there, we'll move into remedial design. And then after remedial design, we'll move into implementing and constructing that remedy to start operation. Now, if it's determined that it is not feasible, we will create a proposed plan with a new selected remedy, and the public will have the opportunity to comment on what they want the selected remedy to be. And then from there, we'll issue an amendment to a record of decision. And then same from here on out, we'll start remedial design and then move into real action to actually construct and implement that remedy. information, and Jason McKinney's or community involvement coordinator. We also have a number of papers in the back that have our information as well, if you would rather just take that. And that's the end, so if anybody has any questions.
Before we do, I just want to mention, I forgot to state that Omar and Dr. Patel here from Texas Health, and they can answer your questions on cancer, if you have any questions. If you have a question.
Have you determined the depth of the contamination and if somewhat is what is stopping that from sinking even deeper? And are there any wells completed in the area in deeper than the non-completed that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so we have shallow monitoring wells and we have deep monitoring wells, and they're completed in both zones. We do have a fairly good confining unit that's at the bottom of the Chico aquifer, that before you get to the Evangeline aquifer, which is that next deeper aquifer. So we have no indications or no data to show us that the contamination has moved beyond that point.
How many feet deep is that?
So I think the roughly like that confining unit is somewhere between 300 to 400 feet below ground surface.
Really?
And yes, what do you mean by a waterline boundary?
Yeah, so the waterline boundary, that's in red, that's where in 2008 EPA constructed a public water supply, and that is the boundary in which people can hook up to that water supply.
Okay, and also, if your water's been tested by THEA, then do they share that with the EPA?
We have had some data shared with us for the EPA, but if you would like the EPA to test your well, we're more than happy to do so.
But you have to be within certain boundaries for y'all to test it?
We do have to do it with the waterline boundary.
Okay, so I'm just a little north of this map, but y'all invited me to come. So I'm just wondering how that works as far as like my water well that's just north of the boundary line, and how does my well interact with this area? Can somebody address that?
One of the things we're looking at is that, how accurate is that map? We're going to find characterizations where the groundwater is. So we're going to determine, is that map representative of current conditions? Our goal is to get a better understanding of where the groundwater is impacted and where it's not. If perchance the plume moved north, we would have to do our investigation ourselves. We would follow this where we're going.
Okay, so then can I still sign up for the EPA to come and check my well that's outside of the boundary? For that, for that reason?
Currently, at this time, we are not offering to extend the boundaries, but we will follow the contaminant form. So if it does indicate that's going north, you can sign up for the mailing list through with Jason McKinney, and we can keep you notified of what's going on.
Hi, Pamela Bonta. So it's the fact that PERC falls to the lowest level of the aquifer. I don't know why you wouldn't test in the Evangeline, because there is not a clay or a dirt barrier separating the Chicote from the Evangeline. So we know those chemicals are falling to the lowest level. Maybe that's why you're not finding it in the Chicote, because they've been falling to the lowest level. I think there is a need for some testing in the Evangeline aquifer to see what is down there, because we know that those chemicals are heavy and they fall to the lowest level.
Yeah, so one of our tactics to figure that out is we are doing that high resolution site visualization, so that's giving us real-time data. And as we push that down, we'll be able to see, oh, does this borehole have contaminant in place, and how far down does it go? and then if it does, you can move out and figure out where it's from there.
Are any of your monitoring wells in the Evangeline aquifer?
No, we don't have any monitoring wells in the aquifer.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Melissa Rowell. I've got a comment and then 2 questions. It looks like the plume, based on the red boundary, is spreading. I think the EPA should measure and monitor just outside that red boundary. I'm to the west of it. I think y'all should check out this lady's, her water in her area, not just because this boundary seems like it's gotten smaller. It doesn't even think of all the tower oaks, and that's wells to the west of that red boundary. My questions are, how deep is the contaminant and how long does it take to get that deep? Because we all know, like water, the aquifers don't recharge very fast, it takes hundreds of years, so I'm curious how fast did the chemicals get down, and how far down do they go? And then my second question is, you mentioned the end goal was for the site to be cleaned up and complete. Does the EPA have a list of any similar sites that have been completed, and I wonder how long that took? So that means you need to know for those. Thank you. So how deep did the contaminant go? How long did it take to get there?
Yeah, so for how long it took to get there, so the dry cleaner operated from 88 to 2002, and the site wasn't discovered until right about the end of its lifespan. So we don't know how long it took, but I can assume it took several decades probably to get that far out into the community. And then,
So how deep is it right now?
so that's one thing we're trying to, so throughout the remedial investigation and feasibility, that was one of our top objectives, to delineate the extent both vertically and horizontally of the plume. We don't have a great grasp on that within the greater boundary area. So that is the goal of this, and that's why we plan so many activities within this investigation.
Okay, this has been ongoing for like 20 years, right? So what's taking so long to measure how far down it's going? Are y'all doing enough?
We may have to garage taking a long time, and we're focusing now on the groundwater. It's taken a long time, I'm not going to dispute that. We focused on remediating the source area, because if you don't address the source area, then you're not going to be able to address the dissolved phase of plume. So we focused a lot of effort the last several years on addressing the source, which is initially still. And now we're focusing on the groundwater. And again, we put in wells. Years ago, we monitored those wells, we continue to monitor those wells. We have wells that tested non-detect over an extended period of time. We know where it's impacted, we know what's not impacted. We're further characterizing it as part of this effort. And we need your help to get that done. We need access agreements to get that done. We need everyone to help us understand this better so we can come up with a permanent remedy for this. That's what we're here, we're asking for your help.
Okay, but to go down really, really deep, you need to put in like an extensometer or something else to go really deep.
That the high resolution site characterization pushes a tool to the depth. We have contractors here. You don't want to discuss that tool or no? Here's one of the contractors, engineering that's going to be doing that work.
Name's David Brown, geologist with Jacobs, doing the recently awarded feasibility study and field investigation, as they're asking about sort of going down to the depth that we're doing for the characterization lines. As I mentioned, it's basically varies in diameter, but a probe rod that has various different sensors that can detect contaminants, hydraulic flow, type of soil or clay that is being pushed through, so we can get a better idea of where there may be barrier layers to prevent it from traveling deeper, or if there is one that we thought was there and is not, to figure that out. But basically, the drill rig will push down a probe that measures in real time. We see the data as it's coming in and recorded, so then, as they were describing, get a clearer picture of where exactly at depth there is potential contaminant, where there's pathways for it, better essentially define plume boundaries and edges and means of transport.
Are you staying in the Jacob only?
The main investigation area is, as they showed in that conceptual site model from 2013, is the two shallow, or the shallow and the deep, and basically stopping at that Evangeline cut off our area around 300 feet or so.
That's all right.
Just to let you know how I found out I was counting in my life. Oh, can hear, okay. I was gonna give you some symptoms, like I had dogs, and every single one of my dogs died of cancer. So I thought, oh, my dogs, dogs just die of cancer. And so it just, okay, now I'm nervous, I can't go any longer. Keep going.
So, what's institutional control's definition and, according to yours? What's an institutional control?
So the one specific to what the Corps is doing, we're going to start working with commercial properties to do either deed notices or certificate covenants on commercial properties. We'll be working with property owners to get those in place, and that's what we have an interagency agreement with them to help us implement those.
All right, the technology that you're using to do your deep sampling, how long has that been in place?
The monitoring laws that are out here, or the new stuff.
The technology you're using to do
Oh, like
deep
how long
sampling, how long has that been available to use?
David said at least a decade or two.
Okay,
Maybe one decade. We don't know.
okay.
You mentioned 10 years, but how long have you thought the technology's been available to use? The high characterization, sub characterization, pushing probes that have sensors that can detect at levels of interest to us.
On your main site, how much reduction has taken place over the last, since you started with this, are you down 50%, 70%, 90%?
So for the soil vapor extraction system, we're actually down greater than 99% from the concentrations from where we started. So that's been a really effective way to reduce the source area contamination and to help it from further propagating out into the community.
So at that point, at 99%, the remediation effort becomes extremely difficult because of the very low quality. We can't get, if you get 90% of 1%, becomes a very challenging task, is it not?
Yeah, the doctor, it is challenging, but we just extended that contract and we're going to keep operating the system until we reach our remedial objective goals that are designated in the 2010 round, which are maximum contaminant levels.
And it's often beneficial to cycle that system. Sometimes we get rebound out of the soils. So there's full vacuum, you turn it off, and we equilibrate, and then you can pull it again. So maybe cycling on and off to get the last bit of contaminant out of the subsurface. At the end, it's tough to get the rest of the gas stream.
Do you have the technology to get to that low level to know where you are within that 1% range?
We can measure down to see what's left. I mean, the technology, the contaminant wants to be in the vapor phase. It's a volatile contaminant. It's rather be in vapor than on water. So given the opportunity into the vapor phase, it'll go there and pull it out of the subsurface. But sometimes it's bound, it's been there 20, 30 years. It's hard to get it out. It's been there that long, it's got to jump on it. That's not that long.
How do you know which aquifer feeds your well?
Where it's green, where the well is green. It depends on where the well is completed and where it's green.
Oh, if it's been in the ground for 50 years, 70 years.
We need to pull a pump and run a camera down it or do some geophysical logging to figure out where the depth.
To figure out which aquifer feeds it?
Yes, where the depth is and where the spring is at. We can do that. If you have no well in that area, you want us to go ahead and characterize it, we would pull the pump, run instruments down and determine where.
THEA was full last year in my property. So I know they did some,
To answer your question, but yes, you need to pull the pipe out, pump out, and just figure out where the spring it should be registered with the state. And
Yeah, I mean, there might be a record within the state's water database.
Can you tell from the testing that y'all have done, is the plume spreading, getting larger, or in which direction is it going?
We've seen some fluctuations, those might be seasonal fluctuations. We've seen some of the private wells kind of go up and also down. So hopefully this new investigation will help us characterize that, whether to figure out if it is migrating further out or not.
Folks, if we could wait to get the mic before you ask your question, because we let people wait.
I'd like to go back and readdress the two phases that you spoke of earlier. Phase one is a bore or hole that is less or about 2 feet deep. The second was a punch bore, as I understand it, that may be 60 to 100 or maybe 200 feet deep, but it's a small diameter bore. It appears to me that what you're really trying to assess, and this is what I'd like you to clarify, is that this product, PCE or whatever name it's under at the moment, is actually boiling off or evaporating or migrating up from the water table into the ground, seeking to go into the air. I think air oxygenation is one way of dissipating this product. So your test in phase one and phase two are really oriented to what is the concentration of state from the aquifer into the actual ground, the stuff I call dirt. Is that assessment correct?
Yeah, that's great, Mr. Haas. Yeah, the passive soil gas samples are trying to collect the vapor that is migrating up from the groundwater. And we usually see that where there's contamination is very shallow. We did the same kind of assessment actually at around the dry cleaner site, and we did see the contaminant move up into that vapor phase around the site. So now we're pushing out, and we're going to see if that same methodology can apply as we set out.
My final question is if this product is actually moving out of what I call water and into the ground, is the water below actually becoming clearer or freer of the contaminant, or is there still a concern of, something in that water?
I don't understand your question, but another way to mention earlier that the contaminant is heavier than water. It's called a denapple or sinking water. So generally, in its product phase, it's going to sink in a water table. It'll continue to sink in the water. Although it is also a volatile contaminant, so given the opportunity, it'll volatilize, so it'll go up to the level.
Okay, so we go into the dirt or into the air or run through an old-fashioned aerator.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Jackie Metcalf, and I'm the founder and executive director of Texas Health and Environment Alliance. First, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here today, and thank you to EPA for being here, for hosting this meeting, and for getting this contract awarded. I know a lot of people are really concerned about funding with the EPA right now, and it's nice to see you all award this contract and know that there is work being done, and there's work being done right here. Our organization focuses on informing and educating communities that are impacted by Superfund sites. And out of the 24 sites in this region, our board of directors authorized us to work on this site because of the open routes of exposure to the public, to humans, to people, and to their animals. And everyone who lives in the area and the public has a say in this process, and your voice matters. When she mentioned the record of decision earlier, and the decisions that will be made, one of the criteria that the agency weighs is public acceptance. And so it's really important for that reason for you all to be engaged in this process and speaking up, whether they're questions or concerns. But another reason is, you know, and I'm not the government, so I can speak frankly with you, they don't know where the plume is. They simply don't know. And that's what they're trying to figure out. And yeah, it's 15 years after the law was signed, but they've awarded the contract, the money's in place, and they're trying to figure it out. But as long as there are private wells in the area, they can't stabilize the plume. And so even remediating it will be difficult. So I strongly encourage you to give them access to sample at your property. And if you are on a well, you know, what we're seeing in our testing and in theirs is fluctuations. Like she said, so it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And that's really unsettling. I wanted to point out one thing, and then ask a question about it specifically. I noticed that you said with the indoor air sampling, there were no exceedances. But just because there's not an exceedance, doesn't mean necessarily that it's not there. Have you all detected contaminants from perc down to vinyl chloride in indoor air outside of the shopping center?
We shut the lights off so you guys can see that.
This is the bottom part is the indoor air. So the quick answer is yes, we have seen some detections. We haven't seen any exceedances. And you can see these, you can't probably see these, but these are regional screening levels. And we start with an industrial commercial, so that would be for the shopping center. That's what those aren't as
Well, they're based on exposure. So if you live in a residence area, you see you're there all the time. If you're a business, you're there 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week. So some of the calculations are based on the duration of exposure as well as who's exposed. Is it an adult? Is it a child? Different values associated with those. So those all go into consideration. And screening levels are set at levels. Different values, we look at cancer or non-cancer. So we look at 1 in a million cancer risk, excessive. If the screening level goes beyond that, regulate below that. The other one is academic with 1. So non-cancer impact, that your kidney, liver, it's 1. Meaning there's a number that necessarily would cause an impact. Greater than lesser than that number. If it's more than it's happening, it's greater than 1. Those are the numbers we look at for screening levels. So again, some of these indoor air are based on those values. So if you see cancer risk of 1 in a million, it didn't have an academic greater than 1. That's what those numbers are.
Thank you, Chris. My last point is related to community engagement and public engagement. And most Superfund sites take about 30 years to be cleaned up. And I've been working alongside this process now for like 15 years. And from what I've seen is it doesn't work unless we engage. So keep coming to meetings. Let your elected officials know you care about this. To me, this isn't a political issue, but it has to be, right? And so let them know. Let whoever represents you know that you care about this, that you live here, that you want this cleaned up, it's your community. And lastly, my question, I know a lot of people have been struggling to see the PowerPoint. Will you put this on your website? Okay, thank you.
My first question is, how much has been spent so far? saying we've got this $1 million, how much has been spent?
I don't have that number readily available. Like I said, he's already at 2.3 million in the current phase of investigation.
Speak up.
The revenue costs have been,
Spend about $500,000 every year to operate the SB system. It's increased, we just extended that contract, and now it's about $700,000 every year to operate that soil vapor extraction system. We also, I know it cost us a couple $1 million to install the public water supply through this, so we spent millions on it.
I understand that, but is there a source that we can go to from the beginning to see how much is spent and how much has been done, has not been done?
We can
And who's
have,
accountable?
well, we have to make, obviously, we have like accountants and people who look at figures back to the office, we get full numbers, to see how much money's been allocated for this project. The second question is, we talked about what's been done, and we still have work to do. So, the second question is hard. But we can come up with a number of how much money's been allocated on this project.
And then my other question is, once it becomes, for simple terms, airborne or whatever, what type of plants would you like to help disseminate that or cleans up that?
What's the question? I'm sorry, I want to hear this question. I'm trying to answer this question.
Since you are the EPA, which is the environment, what type of plants, once this becomes airborne or in the air, would clean that up?
Well, what's it becomes airborne? Yeah, it'll be great. It has a half-life. The chemical will break down to lesser compounds like that's mentioned earlier. It's not going to remain PCB. PCB is going to break down in the environment. It breaks down in the water, it breaks down in the air. So it's not going to stay in that compound. It's going to break down into lesser compounds. Methane water eventually. So it's not going to stay in that state once it's exposed to the air.
Okay. But what can be planted that would help that to break down? Therefore, its roots would also help that to bring it up and be taken care of.
I'm not familiar how effective, we call that phytoremediation. We've had plants that are able to absorb, they bring in chemicals inside the plant. I'm not mainly familiar with how effective that is for treating soil solids. It might be that. I know generally organic compounds are not really. I mean, that's beneficial where the plants will actually come in contact with the contaminant. So it has to be shallow enough depth for the roots to come in contact with it. And I mean, when we add chemicals, or we add in-situ bioremediation, we're just adding amendments to the soil to help the bacteria that's already present in the soil break down the contaminants that are there. We add lactate and multiplied vegetable oil that helps the bacteria that's already present in the soil grow, and then it helps break down those contaminants in place. Bioremediation, it's a contact sport. It's got to be in contact with the contaminant, and then absorb it, and then break it down. Or just in the air, break down. You have to have a half-life, the chemicals have a half-life in air and in water. I know that maybe I didn't answer your question, right? Hopefully, I did.
Hi, I'd like to thank EPA for staying on top of this, and I want to thank EPA for awarding that contract to Jacobs. But I didn't really get an answer to my second question earlier, which was, I know our end goal is for this to be cleaned up and completed. Are we looking at 30 years from when the engineering company's through? Are we looking at 30 years from 10, 20 years ago? Where are we at? And then also, I asked earlier, is there a list of sites that have already been cleaned up that we can refer to and see how long those took? Do you have a list somewhere? Can you send us that list when you send us the cost?
We have a list of all the sites that we've worked on, and we do, we mentioned it earlier, we have these reports that are called 5-year reviews. When we start construction of a project, or an implementation of a remedy, we continue to do those 5-year reviews until we reach the level that the contaminant would allow for, the levels that allow for unrestricted use, meaning there are levels that are below any screening level. And I do those there. We do 25 a year. In our region, we have about 150 sites, and I look at maybe 25 to 35 reviews every year. So we're going back to these sites, looking at their progress. Some of the sites get cleaned up. You know, I had a site I looked at the other day. It was unrestricted. We met all the goals. There was a site in Louisiana, it's Ash Street. So I was like, there's nothing left to be done. I'm like, wow. I don't do that very often, but I saw it the other day. So we do get there. It takes a while, but know that what we're looking at as part of the 5 reviews, is it revenue protected? Is it, you know, is there anybody being exposed? Is there something we can do to help remedy that? So we, you know, we're in for the long term on these projects. Occasionally we get to the finish line, but generally we don't always get there. But we're not done until we do. So I don't have an answer for the time. I know we've made progress here, and I know we still got a lot of work to do.
Okay, kind of to what she just asked, but like, are there case studies, like for how plumes work or how the aquifers interact with each other, and just because I'm curious, like how, like are there case studies of other situations like this, just so that I can kind of learn from that?
Yeah, dry cleaner sites with PCE, that's not a unique issue within the EPA. So yeah, there's lots of case studies. It's just every subsurface has a lot of heterogeneity. It's really diverse within the ground, still in soils. That's part of the problem, is trying to figure out what geology is doing and where the contaminants are moving.
That makes sense. My second question, so like you can go to Amazon and buy a food sensitivity test and not go to your doctor. So are there like water sample tests that like I could test my water, you know, once a month, and kind of, because like y'all say they kind of goes up and goes down. Is there a way that I don't have to have it be an official kind of test for something like this?
For these contaminants, I'm not aware of anything.
Okay.
Actually, you know, they do have testing at Home Depot, their little kits. You can get.
I wouldn't trust it. Hi. I have been doing this for about 20 years. I actually moved in the middle of 5 Superfund sites when I didn't even know what a Superfund site was. All of those sites that I lived right in the middle of were fenced. People were not even allowed to walk on them, and if they did, the EPA was called and said, hey, there's people on that site, you better check it out. This site, which is one of the worst in the nation for vinyl chloride, trichloroethylene, tetrachloroethylene, and we don't know how far it's gone because there isn't testing from y'all outside the plume. Why isn't that site fenced, and why are people allowed to go put their kids in daycare there in that parking lot and watch them run around monitoring wells, which I've literally seen myself, and people go there and eat? I don't get it, but yet I can't get an answer from y'all. Why is this not fenced and shut down?
Sites are typically fenced when we have a direct contact exposure. Let's say you has a pile of contaminated soil, and they can come in contact with the contamination. At this site, the contamination is in groundwater and at depth. So and we tested the indoor air, we continue to test the indoor air in the shopping center. We install vapor mitigation systems. We continue to monitor that, install vapor extraction system. The goal of which is to reduce the contaminant in the subsurface so that we wouldn't have to continue to monitor indoor air.
It's not safe.
It is safe.
I disagree.
Well, we disagree. We sample the air, we measure the contaminant, we take systems to remediate it, we continue to monitor it.
When I moved here in 2012, it said it was remediated. Nothing was being done. I went in that strip plaza. There was a lot of sick people in there with cancer. And I asked them, do you see the EPA coming to monitor these wells? At that time, they said, no, we haven't seen them in years. At that time, until we started barking and saying, hey, nothing's being done here. Meanwhile, people are in there getting sick. And if you're still monitoring and you're still extracting those vapors, it's not safe, period, for people to be on that piece of land, period.
Again, we disagree. We measure that, and again, vapor, probably in the last 10 or 15 years that we really started looking at vapor as a contaminant medium. we looked at groundwater soil, we didn't really focus on vapor until the last decade and a half. So we're learning and we're addressing it now, but maybe you said, you know, back in 20 years ago, it's something we weren't always looking for sure. We are now.
We're talking about a number of properties that you don't have access to that may or may not have wells. In the county, we have easements, county easements, and properties have easements. And this may be the county attorney question, not yours, but is there any way that by county direction, and I know the commissioner's court is having their budget hearing tonight, so they're not here, but is there any way that you can use those access to the property easements to do a sampling test?
Yeah, so that's actually a pathway that we're working on, our contractor. Have already submitted a permit in the county to get access to those easements. So that's, yeah, in lieu of residential access agreements, that's another message that we're pursuing. Great.
Hello. I hope I'm not being repetitive with these questions, but I just wanted to know what the furthest point from the facility was where there was a violation of the MCL. That was question number one.
Okay, this is probably for final chloride, for at least this most recent sampling. We have two mine mineral wells. The maximum contaminant level for vinyl chloride is 2 micrograms per liter per billion. So that's here for vinyl chloride. And then we also have mercury well 16 of these, and that's 6.2. And this is really hard to see, but right at the top here, that's where that water line boundary is. And then for this one, it's here and here.
Would you say that's a couple blocks or half a mile?
From here to here is the average.
And how far down? We don't
How far down as well? I believe this is a deep well. I have to look at the exact. So that's also available on the website too. But I can do that in the next.
And the second part of that was that I understand that there's some folks in the WSA that still aren't connected to public water, and I was just curious of the outreach efforts that we run to try to get them that's connected to public water system.
Yeah, there were a number of door-to-door efforts. I think Jason, I don't know if Jason, you want to speak to that because you were part of that?
Yeah, we went, Raji, the old RPM site, we went 3 or 4 times prior to COVID. We couldn't travel during COVID, and we haven't had a chance to go back yet. But we may be planning that to try to reconnect or try to reevaluate people wanting in front of the water line or not within the boundary.
This is just a question, and it has to do, if by some sort of physics and theory, if we all shut out, if we all went over to public water, and we were drawing from our wells, then what would happen to the stuff in the groundwater anyway? It would still be there alive.
Yeah, it would still be there alive, but the risk to human exposure would be greatly reduced. Oh, and then just over time, M&A monitored natural attenuation, which just naturally happens. So the microbes, the bugs, they're just going to naturally degrade that product over the decades.
Thank you. I believe that the water in this area is supplied by White Oak Bend mud. I'd like to know if White Oak Bend mud is extracting base water from the contaminated aquifer, and secondly, if they're testing for these contaminants.
Is TCQ one
I've never heard any of that. I think the Houston is going off using groundwater as a source of drinking water.
The White Oak Bend, but I think they still have wells. I would have to check. We can contact them, but I believe they're extracting their water from the marine aquifer, so it's not at risk for being contaminated.
And they're required to test it as a public purveyor of water. They're water tests to make sure that water's safe for the customer.
And those are publicly available on the TCQ website. Okay, so I check my hand on them. I got them because I'm on a little list.
First of all, we have clean water wells and other wells outside of the defined it. And the other one is amazing, just all the data.
I don't have that off the top of my head, or I don't have it memorized or anything, but, we can at least facilitate that, maybe the next meeting to have those numbers.
One of the functions is to do centralized model, just to gather all the existing data and put it in one place that we can evaluate. So we have years of data and different reports. One of the things we're doing is consolidating all the information in a database that we can evaluate that in. So yeah, there's a lot of data. We need to have it all. Let's be smart about it. Get it so we can evaluate it. And that's a conceptual design model. That's one of the things we're working on doing. That's one of the things. They're to show it as well, present it. We'll be, next couple of meetings we'll start generating these models, the data interpretations that'll help us show where this plume is and where it's not, based on the data that we've been able to gather and evaluate. So that's one of the things that they're tasked to do for us. So yeah, we'll get better at it. I'm back here to know about that map to show you.
We do have one monitoring well in the Northwest that we test, but during the original discovery, they did sample a whole bunch of separate wells through here, and that was kind of used, that data was used as a basis to get a rough idea of where the contamination was.
My other comment is, this has been going on so long. We're now looking at the second generation of property owners in that area. Those first generation that owned the original property when it was discovered probably are gone. So many of those new homeowners and young families may not be fully aware that this is happening since, before COVID was the last community contact or door-to-door. I really would impress upon you to make sure that we notify those property owners that we have a concern. We don't know if it's there, but we do have a concern, and I think they need to be aware of it for their own personal health and for their children. And if they're senior citizens, they're even more vulnerable. Due to studies with Love Canal taking, a shower in this contaminated water is 7 times more dangerous than drinking it because it goes directly into your lungs from the steam. So I'm just really concerned about the young families moving in this area and making sure that they're aware of this situation.
We do give them fact sheets, and we had a meeting here last year. Everybody's within the plume. Where everybody's within the water outlet, where the plume is, they're notified.
They receive something in the mail?
Yes, we get fact sheets, the notices go out. What we haven't been able to do prior to COVID, we haven't been able to go out and go door to door and ask people that we connect. That's the only thing, but everybody within the plume should know. They're definitely getting notices of fact sheets.
So it's not on that real estate agreement that they're signing when they're buying their property?
I don't know,
No, but that's an institutional control that we will look at in the future once we fully delineate the parameters and that kind of mechanism that was outlined in the record decision.
Hi, my name is Rachel Gordon. I'm the Assistant Director of Texas Health and Environment Alliance. I just wanted to kind of respond to Chris and his answer to her question. In the second 5-year review, it states in the residential areas west of the site, the potential exists for a complete exposure pathway through the ingestion of and possible thermal contact with contaminated groundwater and vapor intrusion of subsurface vapors emanating from the groundwater. So there is thermal contact is an issue at this site as well.
It's definitely a pathway that it is mean, I've reviewed that before, was involved in that before. We said, yeah, we can't make a determination that's protected or to say it's not protected. And we said that. We were talking earlier about the shopping center, or is the air inside the shopping center safe? And we tested it. We talked about fencing. If there was a direct contact exposure, that would be a mechanism, an engineering control to prevent people coming in contact with that. But at the shopping center, the contaminant was within the building and down into the groundwater. We tested. Again, I don't know the answer, but I mean, certainly that's the finding of the report. Because people are in this area are still on public private water wells. That's the potential. There's a potential for them to be using that water and being exposed to it. We asked them to sign up to be able to put a public water supply. They'll do that. We'll eliminate that exposure pathway for them. Cleaning up groundwater in place is a long time. Takes a long time. But we can hook someone up in a couple of months. And even if they don't even have to say their well's impacted, they can say, I don't even want to worry about it, hook me up. Come talk to us, we'll take care of that for you. So I'm not disagreeing with you, the report does say that.
Omar Valdez, Department of State Health Services. I just wanted to share with you that we also review the data sets that EPA generates. We look at it for human health exposure. You may have heard of health consultations and public health assessments. The past one that was done for this site was in 2005 by the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, ACCR. With this new data set that EPA is committed to, that they already have a contractor that will be collecting, it will include also, I heard, some vapor intrusion, indoor air samples for those that get access to that. So I'm sharing this with you to let you know two things. One, that we independently review this data aside from EPA and look at it not just for a perspective, but for a human health exposure, like the things you were saying about thermal. So that's, thank you for bringing that up. And secondly, we do very conservative modeling. We do exposure scenarios for showering or using the water at home, for all the different ways that you can use this water, indoor air. So we look at that independently as part of the health consultation process. We don't know what is next for us as far as what we'll do, but one thing we are going to do is review data independently.
A lot of people that work in that strip plaza are sick. That's not okay.
I have a question. The outlining corner level, did you ever figure out why that was so high? Way up in the corner.
Yes.
Why was that so high?
Oh, that was a.
Sorry for that on that. That's 0.5 U, so that was determined on the test. That's as low as the analytical methods can see. So the fountain was did not exceed the maximum contaminant level.
So it already came down, but why was it high enough when they tested it in the year?
Well, I'm not aware that it was high. Okay.
Hi, I would State Rep. Around the Shaw's office, and we sat on the Environmental Regulation Committee in this session and the Elections Committee. I can tell you a little bit, we did work hard to try to get some legislation passed. We're working on land facts, so we work as car facts. If you, as a seller, as you as a buyer, we're going to go buy land in the state of Texas, our law would implement that you would get a report from TCEQ that would tell you the land facts, whether there were contaminants on that land or not. We have seen a huge increase in farmers buying land in West Texas. Once they are buying that land, they're coming to the state and they're like, hey, I bought this land. You said it was going to bring me prosperity. I put the agriculture, I bought the cattle. They're dead. There are chemicals just buried on top of that, and they won't even know that those chemicals existed. So that legislation did fail in committee, but we'll be bringing that legislation back on next session. And so I just want to let you guys know if you have any questions or concerns, I'll be ready to be here. But yeah, Committee Morales shall be sound environments with, but we did try to make sure that if you do buy land and the state of Texas, that you are going to get notified if it was contaminated or not, because we believe as a buyer and seller, you should be aware of that. So that's all. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? We're getting close to 8.
So you said that once you do the new field study, that you're only going to go 300 feet from my understanding. Is there no concerns that it's gone deeper than that? And if there is no concern, why is that, or why aren't you going up? So let's say 400 feet, or, because I'm sure some of those do go 400 feet, right?
Yeah, I'd have to review the data a little more thoroughly. I just don't remember, but during that initial investigation that they did out here, I think there were wells that were within 400 feet, but that's something I'd have to review. But we will be working with our contractors to, delineate the vertical and horizontal extent out here. So we hopefully can get a better idea of what the term is and where it's done.
Okay, so then y'all are willing to go deeper than 300?
We will follow the contamination wherever that is.
Okay.
I would like to know, I heard about this, pretty much when it was discovered 30 years ago. I'm just curious, and I've always been curious, what happened to the owner of the dry cleaner that started this thing in the first place?
Yeah, so that owner, I believe TCQ went after for liability, and they did pay what they could into that initial fund for the site, but it wasn't nearly enough. And then at that point, it got sent to the federal government to take over the fund.
Okay, there was no prosecution or anything like that? Or?
He died.
Oh, good.
He died. Well, she opened up another cleaners around the corner.
All right, well, this was our last question. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
We will be here, Texas Health, TCQ will be here, and would you like to ask some questions first one? Thank you.